Hello and welcome to Caregivers First, a show brought to you by SCAN. SCAN is a nonprofit agency dedicated to helping active adults stay informed, empowered, and inspired. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, and I'm the Executive Director of Caregiver Volunteers of Central Jersey. I also care for and live with my 92-year-old mother who has dementia. We all know that people with dementia have very special needs, and they need very special attention and care. On today's show, I'm going to help you know the questions you should ask when you're thinking about placing your loved one in a care facility, so that you can make the best decisions and gain peace of mind. My guest is Lisa Kelly, who is the Regional Director of Business Development at CareOne. Welcome, Lisa. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I recently read an article that said that there was a research study and that people that are placed in special memory care units do much better than people that are placed in just a nursing facility in the general population, yes, which I'm sure you could attest to.
Yes.
So talk to me about what is that special memory care unit and how is it different from a nursing home population?
So specially trained staff is usually in those environments. They seek out individuals that have the compassion and patience that it takes to deal with someone that has some memory issues. Those types of communities would focus on learning someone's life history and maybe bringing into their work history, maybe their family, old interests that they used to have that used to bring positive memories to them. And we bring that into a focus, into a focus area so we can, I'm sorry.
So it's just really,
it's
you're
patient-centered.
learning about the person.
It's patient-centered.
Right.
So we take all of the things that we know before someone's coming in or before a community, and we develop a plan around how we can keep them social, going into dining 3 times a day. What activities or programs did they used to do that now we can still incorporate to have them more social? And I think that's a big part of their day.
At what stage in Alzheimer's or dementia do people generally go into a memory care unit? At what stage are they generally in?
So with assisted living, you will find individuals that are maybe middle stages. They're able to still come out and go to the dining room. They'll go to art classes. When you get into later stages, you might find that some of the family members are more looking for a nursing care option, which would be more of a nursing home. With the assisted livings for memory care, we're able to care for them a little bit longer, keeping them involved in the activities, but also introducing maybe some therapy, physical, occupational, and speech. We find that that's been an integrated piece of having their days a little bit more fulfilled, keeping them stronger a little bit longer.
And I guess the stereotype of Alzheimer's facility is people lined up in wheelchairs, looking at a wall or at the nurse's station, or parked in front of a TV that they're not watching. And it seems like you're trying to do just the opposite of that.
We are. We found that music programs have been the most instrumental, bringing back positive memories, maybe some special events that have occurred in their lives. Art class, behavioral art therapy, they can do as much as they can, but it also will bring out some positive memories. Old movies, having a conversation. It may not be a clear-cut current conversation, but you can also get to know that person and know where they are in their life at that time. Maybe it brings up some positive memories from when, they were younger, before they were married, maybe when they first had children. Even with the musical aspect, graduations, weddings they've attended. Those are positive memories that we have found, and most researchers have found, has done some really good things for people with memory issues.
And talk to me about the security measures, because recently in the paper there's been terrible stories about people that have left the facilities and then they wandered. I think there's still a man who wandered away who's still missing.
Yes.
So what sort of security measures are in place for
When
you?
you're looking for a true memory care community, you want to make sure that it's secured. The doors would be secured with maybe a code that staff would let you in and out. That's there to ensure that they're not wandering out, especially as cold as it's starting to get or as hot as it gets in the summer. So wandering out is, redirecting them if they're going to an exit door. We have found that as long as we are redirecting and keeping them busy, they're not looking to get out or try to go home or something like that. But, having a secured environment, if you're looking for memory care, is one of the most important things to look for.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, it was a really big thing to put up pictures on windows, so it didn't look like a window, but it looked like a bookshelf.
Yes.
Is that still done? Is that something that
I think it
still
depends
happens?
on the communities that are out there. I think most people would like to see it, look more like a home environment than a bookshelf or some type of wallpaper to mask the door. And if you're keeping your residents occupied and in programming and redirecting them and keeping them in therapy, they're not really looking for the exit doors.
Yeah. Talk to me about the staffing level. Is there a standard across the United States? Is there a standard in New Jersey? What does that staffing level look like?
Staffing levels really are based on what kind of patients you have, what kind of residents. If you have a very high acuity, which would be a lot of need, your staffing would be based upon, what the needs are of the people living with you. There's not a national standard because, again, it's based on if you have more advanced memory care, your staffing is going to be higher just because they need more care.
And what's the training? So you mentioned early on that the people that work in here get a special level of training. Tell me about what training they go through.
So most dementia care specialists that work in, or care partners that work in our type of environment or a memory care environment, really need training on how to deal with difficult behaviors, how to deal with someone that needs some cueing and reinforcing, because it might become repetitive and you have to have the patience for that. So to have the tools to deal with someone with memory care is the most important. And I think that if you're training your care partners the right way, the day of the resident goes so much easier because we know and they know that they can trust us. We've come to build a relationship, and therefore going forward in that day, the training is intricate when it gets tough to sundowning or there starts to become some behaviors. The staff training is one of the most important things, and for most, you shouldn't pick an environment that the staff has not been fully trained.
For a family who they made the decision, okay, mom or dad or husband or wife, it's time to move them into a facility. I can't take care of them at home anymore. It's too dangerous for them to live alone. The questions that they should be asking when they're touring places and looking for a placement, the questions that they should be asking is, number one, do you have a separate memory care unit? I'm thinking, right? So that's a top number one question. Number two, how is the staff trained? What sort of training does the staff go through? And can anybody call themselves a memory care unit if they just stick people with dementia? Do you have to, in order to become a memory care unit, what is the criteria so a family would know, like, oh, this really is a memory care unit? It's not just that they're putting all their people in one place and locking the door.
Right.
How do you get to call yourself a memory care unit?
Staff training, number one.
Staff training, okay.
If it is a secured environment, you want to make sure of that.
Okay.
Also the programs that are involved. The programs need to be specific for people that have some dementia, Alzheimer, or memory loss. If it's a traditional assisted living, that programs are not going to be geared towards somebody that has memory impairment. So programming is very important, because what are they going to be doing all during the day? And I think that would be one of the top 3 things to be asking a community when you go out to tour. The other part of it is, what is the meal time like? Because nutrition is very important. You want to make sure that weight is being maintained, they're getting the proper nutrients every day. The other aspect is, what is the staff like? Is there nursing staff there? Is there a nurse around the clock? That's important as well.
And that's not required? So that's not like a rule, or
well, New Jersey state regulations say it needs to be someone that's available by phone.
Okay. So a question is there a nurse
around the
physically
clock,
present?
physically on site?
Okay.
Yes. Very important.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What other questions?
And then your staff ratios would be
Okay.
another top question to ask, just because you want to make sure that there's not 2 caregivers and there's 40 people.
Right.
You know, that wouldn't be appropriate for the need of someone with memory care.
Should you ask how many people are in this unit? Is that important
Yeah,
consideration?
I mean, most people do ask that. Whether it's a smaller community, they want to know how big it is for the memory care.
Right. And I think the point that you brought in about, are you offering some music enrichment program? Are you bringing in therapy dogs for people? Because for me, that's one of the best things that you could do for people. Is there any sort of intergenerational programs?
Right.
So these are all things that people should be asking about.
Absolutely, with the programs. And you also have to base those programs around what the residents, the clientele is like. If you're getting their life story up front and understanding what their likes and dislikes are and what they used to do for a living and what they enjoy, basing your programs around who's living there is really how your calendar should be set.
And I imagine that some people just want to be left alone, right?
Yeah, find some here and there.
And then you have to respect that as well, I guess, right?
I think with enough queuing, and when you find out enough of the family history and the residents' history, you're able to bring things into the community that will attract them to come out. You seat them maybe with, if they're a veteran, other veterans that they'll have things in common with for mealtime. If they enjoy certain things, or they used to have a certain occupation, maybe partnering them up with someone that has similar backgrounds as them as well.
Yeah. One of the saddest things, I think, is when people are at a facility and nobody comes for the holidays, and I always think of that, like they're seeing all their friends and the grandkids come and pick them up, and then nobody's coming for them. That always breaks my heart.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
But hopefully the staff, because they get to know the residents so well, they become part of the family. It really does become a family when you have a community that everybody's a part of, the programming, the activities, the meal time, taking care of them. When they gain their trust, if the family's able to come or not, if they see them on a holiday, that makes the world to them.
And it must be hard for staff, because Alzheimer's disease, dementia doesn't get better. The person is progressing. So I imagine you must have things in place for the staff just to deal, because they do become part of the family, just to deal with their own grief. And how do you deal that? How do you work with that with the staff?
Well, we do a couple different. So we.
You know what? I started that question. I'm going to hold that thought, because I want to talk about that, because I think that's really important.
Very
People
important.
don't realize that.
Very important.
So we're gonna take a short break, and then I'm going to come back and talk more with Lisa Kelly, and we're also going to talk about some of the behaviors, and maybe you could give us some hints about that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You probably already know that rehabilitation is a must for successful recovery from surgery, injury, or serious illness. What you may not know is that you're free to choose where you go for rehab. In Monmouth and Ocean County, the compelling choice is CareOne. Where you choose to go for rehab matters, and with CareOne, you have 4 convenient locations to choose from in Monmouth and Ocean counties. CareOne at Jackson, CareOne at Wall, CareOne at Homedale, and CareOne at King James in the Atlantic Highlands. At CareOne, You'll work with a team of experts to develop a plan based on your needs and goals. You'll have the full support of caring, compassionate physicians, RNs, licensed therapists, and nutritionists dedicated to helping you recover successfully without setbacks at a pace that makes you comfortable and successful in meeting your rehabilitation goals. Once you take the first step with us, you'll never look back. Call 877-99-CARE-1 today and come for a tour.
Welcome back to SCAN and Caregivers First. I'm your host, Lynette Whiteman, Executive Director of Caregiver Volunteers of Central Jersey, and I'm having a really interesting conversation with Lisa Kelly, and we're talking all about the world of memory care and when you have to place your loved one in some sort of long-term care sort of situation. So thanks, Kelly. Welcome back. Before we go into the difficult behaviors, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, I think most people think of dementia and Alzheimer's disease as 80s and 90s, but that's not necessarily true. So what are some of the indicators? Let's say people are going to see their loved one over the holidays and they haven't seen them for a while. Yeah. What should they be aware of that might tip them off that, hey, I need some further testing here?
Some of the things that might tip off a family member would be expired items in the refrigerator. Maybe repetitive storytelling of something, asking the same question and they asked it 5 minutes ago. Hoarding of things, things being disheveled in the home, or if they're coming to your home, if you're finding that they're not able to sit down at the table and really focus on eating a meal, it becomes a little bit confusing of a fork, a knife, a placement, something like that.
Right. I think also a lot of times families are surprised when bills aren't being paid.
Yes, yes.
They think everything's fine, and then they come home and they see the bills piled up, and they're like, wait, what's going on here? And there's a tip that maybe they need to step in there. Yeah.
One of the other key indicators would be the medication, if they're on them.
Right.
Are they expired? Have they been missing their medication?
Right.
If someone sets up a pill box maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, is the medication being taken? And there are ways that the person might try to cover by saying, I told you that. No, that's not what I said. And sometimes you just have to tune in a little bit more to see maybe they are being more forgetful a little bit at a time, that it becomes defensive in their nature.
Right. And it's important that people realize that it's not always Alzheimer's disease or dementia.
Correct.
It could be that it's B12 deficiency, or it could be that they are on a mix of medications that is causing them to have memory problems. So if there is that fear there, or those alarm bells, they need to see somebody and get some further testing.
And it could be something medically induced, maybe a urinary tract infection that can cause some increased confusion quite quickly.
Okay, thanks for that. Let's get into somebody is in your memory care unit and the staff is having to deal with some difficult behaviors, and maybe some tips that you could give to caregivers at home that you've learned, that you've trained your staff.
Right.
So you mentioned sundowning before.
Yes.
So for people who don't know, sundowning is when about 4 or 5 o'clock at night, when it's starting to get dark, there tends to be a higher level of agitation in the person who has Alzheimer's disease. They may pace, they may get angry. It's a pattern of that time of day. There is some agitation that happens.
Yes.
How do you train your staff to deal with this?
So at sundowning, it's important to make the activity or what you're doing with your loved one very calming.
Okay.
We don't want to do anything that's going to bring out the agitation, because it's already a confusing time for them. So anything that we introduce in the sundowning area would be more of a sensory, more of a calming, more of a talking group. And we get the staff involved so we can bring the tensions down a little bit. Maybe redirect them with some positive information that we've learned about them. As a loved one, maybe it's just talking about something positive that happened in their life, and that can sometimes decrease the agitation as well.
And I imagine, going back to the music, playing calming music
Yes,
really helps as well.
very much.
Is there a thought about turning lights up or brighter?
They should be brought down.
Down,
yes.
okay.
Because you do want it to be a more calming effect
Okay.
that they're seeing. When it's bright, it might be a little bit too much for them, and that could agitate them even more.
Okay. And the other thing that we hear all the time is a combination of wandering, wanting to leave, and I think you even touched on this before too. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home.
Right.
How do you teach your staff to deal with that?
Well, with any of the behaviors that may come with someone, again, it's about finding out what their history was and redirecting them in a more positive manner. It could be just sitting down with them and listening to them. You have to validate how they're feeling at that time. We can't tell them, well, this is your home, because they don't realize that they're somewhere. They know that they have a home somewhere else most of the time that they're remembering at that moment. So not being anywhere like not going against what they're feeling at the moment, really jumping into their worlds. Where are they? Maybe just asking them very slight questions about, did you work today, or things like that, because you'll understand where they are in their aging process. They may be thinking it's 20 years ago, and certain things that they're not aware of happened in those 20 years. So sitting down and finding out why and how they're feeling that way has been one of the reasons that our staff has been, and most staff that is trained well, is able to keep someone calm when they're acting out in behaviors. You can also step back a little bit. I don't think getting close to someone that may be having a behavior is ever a good idea. So if we just step back and redirect, maybe cue them to something that's positive in the community that we can sit down and do with them.
And one thing that's not talked about a lot is that sometimes with Alzheimer's disease, and it's probably more with men, I'm thinking, but there is some sexual misconduct. I wouldn't even call it misconduct. I don't know what the word is. But sometimes there's some sexual inappropriateness where they'll take off all their clothes and start walking around, or they might go into a female's room and want to get into bed with them. And it's important to realize that this is the illness. This is part of the illness that's happening. But when family members hear about this, they are horrified and they are so embarrassed about it. Is there any advice that you can give for that, or a training that your staff learns about this?
We do have a separate training.
Oh, you do?
Yes, because it's important. You have to understand that it's not the person that they used to be. We did have someone that was sexually inappropriate, and he did have a spouse, and it really did hurt her feelings. And we actually got her involved in one of our groups that we hold, just to talk about her feelings and have her understand this is not your husband, and he's not understanding why he's doing it. And then we also, get some mental health training in as well, to talk to the staff about how to approach it, because it's much different than someone that is pleasantly confused. Now they're doing things that are somewhat inappropriate to most people that you would seek out the help for. There's other things out there that I've seen physicians try to give certain medications that can curb the sexual inappropriateness. And it's
very
also difficult.
It's very difficult, and it's also scary for the other residents when they see that, and you can't explain really what's going on. It's got to be just so scary for people to have to go through that. That's really a scary thing.
And with the wandering, and if there is some inappropriateness, I mean, the staff is well aware. There should be team meetings going on if there's any change in anyone's behavior, so you can address it. And when you have staff 24 hours a day, they're able to really monitor the situation to make sure, we're redirecting and, curbing the behavior as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. Is there a story of somebody, one of your residents, that really sticks out for you, of somebody who came in and maybe was a little more within themselves, and then by learning who they were and finding out who was in there, came out a little bit?
We have quite a few. I can specifically speak about someone that he was very much a loner. He lived alone. He was a mechanic, so he spent most of his time in, cleaning up his shop and all of those types of things. When he first came to us, he was very adamant about, he wanted to sit alone in the dining room. And then we got to know a little bit more and more and more about him. And he found friendships within some other gentlemen that were there. And he could talk about his work that he did on cars. And then we found out that he used to clean up the shop, and he would like, a dustpan, and he would like a broom, and to this day he'll walk around the dining room and he cleans up, he sweeps up, and he feels so useful. He actually thinks that he works with us, which I think is great because it keeps him very positive.
Right.
It gets him out of his room. He socializes with the other gentlemen there, talks about things that may have happened 20 years ago, but he still feels it today.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah.
I think you touched on the key issue when you're talking to caregivers, and that's meet them where they are. Don't try to bring them back to your reality.
No.
It's not going to work.
No, it's not.
And that is such a hard thing to do, because you're losing them, and you want to bring them back. So you're saying, no, your mom and dad are dead, or whatever.
Yeah.
But once you learn just to meet them where you are, your life is so much easier in their life. And that's got to be like point A with your staff. Just meet them where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting into their world.
Yeah.
We have to understand how their day goes, because we don't want to change too much.
Yeah.
They've already moved into somewhere that is not their home.
Yeah.
So now we have to do as much as we can to keep their day the same as it was at home. And education with the families is key.
Yeah.
Holding communication meetings and not telling mom or dad too much about things that have happened, whether it's someone that passed away, or because they then can think about that all day and become very upset by it. And it could start going on for the next day if that's all they're consumed with. So talking to the families and having them communicate better, and really come for the visit. Let's not talk about things that might bring them down.
Right. Yeah,
It's very important.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So tell me, we have about a minute left. Tell me about CareOne. Where you're located throughout New Jersey?
Throughout New Jersey.
Okay.
Yep. We have skilled nursing, subacute rehab, and then we also have assisted living. And today we're speaking about, which is our Harmony. That is our memory care assisted living.
Okay.
It's specifically designed for individuals with memory care. We focus on special training, really having the nursing component there as well, because at some point there might be a nursing issue that comes in to play.
Right, great. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me. You gave great information.
I appreciate it.
And thank you all at home for joining Lisa and I today. I know this is something that many families struggle with, and we gave you some advice and some hope if you're dealing with this. So again, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you next time on Caregivers First. Thank you.
Thank you.